Radio. Now let me repeat that all again. Hello and welcome back to The Happening. My name is Jorge Shaft and you are listening to Relaks Radio, The Happening with Jorge Shaft, which just repeated. Anyway, I was just talking about some government plans to make up like a new lockdown, which, let's face it, it's going to happen in the UK. To address though a comment that appeared on the Facebook live stream, which I always make a point of monitoring and seeing. Your mileage may vary depending on what country you are. I'm not completely familiar with like Bangladesh's situation, but like if like their circumstances are different, like hey, maybe they need it. Anyway, let's move on though to our next story, which is actually two stories, and actually a bit behind the scenes, lift the curtain. I actually put us like two different slots at first, but then I was like, they're really in many ways the same story. And then there's a few like small add-ons as well. And it's titled Boris Johnson has scandals. Where to start? I think I'll start with the basics. So Boris Johnson has decided to go on a bit of a holiday at the moment. He's gone to Scotland, which is, yeah, fair enough, very beautiful part of the country, doing sort of prime minister things. And he's unfortunately had a bit of a ping. Yeah, first story is BBC News. Boris Johnson will not isolate after COVID case among staff. Ah dear, here we go. Downing Street says Boris Johnson will not self-isolate after a member of his staff tested positive for COVID during a trip to Scotland. Number 10 said the visit was carried out in line with COVID protocols and the Prime Minister has not been in close contact with a positive case. But one source told the BBC that Mr. Johnson had in fact been very close to the person who tested positive. The Labour Party accused the PM of cooking up a reason to be above the rules. Ah dear. I mean, there's not much even to say to that. One rule for them, one rule for everybody else, isn't it? If I'd had a thing like that, and it was like, oh, someone I know has gotten infected, and like I was in close contact with them, and I didn't self-isolate it, I'd be punished for that. But the Prime Minister, who cares? It's not even like it's the first time it's happened too. Back in July, you have this exact same story pretty much. Like another person who's like in Johnson's, like social contact kind of circle, got a positive test, and he was just like, oh well, yeah, you see, it was a cloudy day, and in cloudy days you could never get infected with the COVID-19 virus. With convention, it's quite interesting actually that like we talk about this, and it's just a show of like a sign of how adaptable and interesting in many ways the COVID-19 virus actually is, because because Boris Johnson's got this secret little thing called he's already been infected, he's already had COVID, but he went to the hospital, he spent some time being sick. They all tried to kind of like deny it, but he was at death's door. Like, it was kind of like one of those 5 minutes go differently, and Boris Johnson would be among the deceased. But he survived, and we were spared the Dominic Raab prime ministership. But he's going around, still feeling like he's above the rules, still feels like, maybe even feels like, I've already had the virus, I can't be infected again. I talk about it more, but we've literally already had this story happen already. So I'm going to whistle stop tour to a story that we've actually not had before, and that was something that he also said in this Scotland trip. I've got Politico up for this, and it's titled Boris Johnson Sparks Outrage Over Joke. And you see, a little aside on that, which is normally I wouldn't talk about this kind of thing, but it's like, oh, he's just told a joke. Hard eye roll. But then there's the second part about Margaret Thatcher closing coal mines. That kind of sparked my interest. Like, what did he say? Thanks to Margaret Thatcher, we had a big early start, and now we're moving rapidly away from coal altogether, Johnson said. That's what it is. The UK Prime Minister, on a visit to Scotland on Thursday, caused a stir when he joked that former PM Margaret Thatcher's closure of coal mines had given Britain a head start on tackling climate change. A quip Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon called crass and deeply insensitive. According to the BBC, Johnson then laughed after he said his joke and told reporters, "I thought that would get you going." And I mean, get you going it did. Like, basically anyone to the left of, the right hard shoulder on the motorway was like, hey, actually, what the hell? Margaret Thatcher actually really destroyed millions of lives and made life worse for everyone in most of the nation. What kind of joke is that? A lot of people also kind of pointed out that it was just really not true, in a sense. I mean, for a start, Margaret Thatcher closed the coal mines, not because of climate change, but because the coal mines were full of unions and were a left-wing power block in the nation. And she was like, we want conservative rule forever. Get rid of the lefties in the unions. You can tell, especially, that that was the attitude, and not, let's have a climate change thing, because she imported millions of tons of coal from Poland just to kind of prepare for the absolute battle against the miners. Which, I mean, first of all, importing from a communist country during the Cold War, that's all kinds of loyal, patriotic thing to do, isn't it? But then also, it's just a sign of if you were genuine about, let's move on from coal, you wouldn't stockpile millions of tons of it from a foreign country, before you go to war with the miners. That just shows that it was a deliberate plan from the start, with the intention of, I want to destroy these people. I want to destroy, their kind of livelihoods, their community, their resistance, and then, do whatever I want with my infinite power as a British Prime Minister. But I think something was missed in this story. There was all this outrage. There's all these people who were kind of going oh, how dare you, good sir. But the thing I think is missed is the fact that Boris Johnson is actually the first Prime Minister since really Thatcher, who actually has quite a few MPs from the north of England, or the first Conservative Prime Minister. Actually has quite a few, from the north of England. They called it the Red Wall. It was the sort of this huge line of Labour constituencies in the north of England that have been feeling, rubbished out and kind of useless since Thatcher destroyed them on purpose, and they voted for Johnson. And a part of me wonders, does this really show how secure Johnson actually feels? Not just in the Premiership in general, but also in the loyalty of those areas. Let's think about it. Yes, it's true. Margaret Thatcher destroyed all these areas, and she did it on purpose, and she did it with the idea of, I want to destroy this resistance. There's no nice way of putting it. That's just what it was. But then there was 40 years that passed by, right? The 1980s were actually quite a long time ago now. And in that time, yeah, sure, a lot of people, were really bitter and really angry at the fact that this happened. But then what happened? They elected Labour MPs. Okay, sure. And then they stayed poor. And I mean, yes, you can argue that New Labour under Tony Blair made things better, which he did. No, objectively, you can see it on all the numbers, all the stats. But he didn't make it better relative to the South. He didn't make it, kind of like a sustaining area with its own, new identity. It's new kind of we used to be coal miners, but now we do this. Think of, for example, Cornwall, which, not the same story. It wasn't factory did this, but they have exactly that. We used to be miners. We used to be well known as tin miners, but then the tin ran out in 18 stupid, and now we are a tourist hotspot and a farming area that makes really well known cheeses. Why doesn't the north of England have that anymore? Why are we still hung up on the fact that the miners and the factories were busted in the 1980s and then never recovered? So Boris Johnson, though, has been, like him or hate him, I don't like him, has been the first Prime Minister, for the Tories especially, going around saying, hey, yeah, let's do something about this. So I think that, honestly, he makes the joke because he knows his supporters are going to forgive him. He knows that the people in the Red Wall areas who all voted Tory in the last election, they're not going to turn around on him and go actually, you made a joke on the most evil person in our area's existences. Because, the most evil person was a long time ago. Yeah, sure, grandparents and parents, older parents of adult children are going to be remembering. But everyone else? Really not. I have one final story when it comes to Boris Johnson. And I purposely didn't tell Jamie, who's doing the kind of behind the scenes stuff on it, because it's not serious and I don't want it to be a tagline. But there was a little story that came out, which was Boris Johnson also went to sea while in Scotland. Went on one of those little floaties and was swept out actually to the ocean and had to be rescued. And I'm glad on a human life level that he got rescued from being drifted out to the middle of the ocean. But on a little nasty politics level, I have to admit I did have the thought could they have just left him? I don't mean that, but So would it really? It's kind of the kind of thoughts how much of a loss would it really have been, though? Yeah, it's the right thing to do to rescue him, but on the other hand, no. Maybe you could have waited a bit, Anyway, crass jokes aside, on all levels, I'm really curious to know, what do you think, though? Leave a comment below in the comment section of our live stream. I'm live streaming on Facebook. I'm live streaming on StreamYard. You can download the app on the Google Play Store and on the Apple App Store. I am on the app. It is all kinds of great and fantastic and wonderful stuff. But I'm not the only one who talks. That's right, yes. You see, there are these other people who say such interesting, such fascinating things. I always learn something really new every time these other people talk. And I think you should meet them too. And I'll catch you all again very, very soon.
Again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, you've had one to forget, God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, has how much it's changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.